Is this working now? Yeah? Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also a little nervous, so bear with me a little bit. I'll get my bearings and we'll go through this together. But I'm so excited to talk to you guys. I've talked to groups before, but you know, talking to the people that design for the Federal Reserve is pretty damn cool. To tell you the truth, I mean, when I tell people, oh, I'm going to speak to this group of people, they're like, how the hell did you get that gig? You know, so so today I'm going to talk about a little bit about my work and the studio that I founded, and mostly about the approach that I take to design. I am, like Pete said, I am a professor at Rutgers. I head the graphic design program there. I also run a design studio full-time with 3 people under me. So trying to find the balance between the two worlds is crazy. And I've also worked for so long in the industry. I've worked in-house for a very long time. I've worked in education. I've worked for nonprofits. I've worked for profit institutions as well, and advertising agencies, which I won't talk about. That's like just a whole part that I don't even bring up anymore. But so yeah, and the thing with a talk like this is, I think, you know, I've been to conferences as well when you're looking at people's work and you're like, well, that's not the work that I do. That's not the clients that I have, you know? And you're like, well, how's that going to work with me, and what can I take from this? For me, what I would love you to take is the way that I approach design. I think that methodology, or the different ways that I kind of look at design, or maybe a project, could be the way that you can apply, you know, that approach to writing, to web design, and to print ultimately. So my presentation too is kind of broken down in bits and pieces of information of why I love print. I'm really interested in neuroscience and psychology in terms of its relation to print, and I'll have bits and pieces of that and hopefully make some correlations to how that kind of connects to the work that I do at some point. So my title is a reference to the 80s hits of Madonna, Material World. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and, you know, she just kind of dominated everything, and I thought it was just a perfect title for this talk that I'm giving. Every talk that I do actually has a pop reference. It's just, you'll see that that's part of the humor in my work as well. It comes in subliminally, or sometimes very blatant. The other thing that I'd like to do with this talk is I wanted to kind of make it a little bit more intimate. So the work that you see on screen will also be passed around, so you can kind of experience the work in its physicality while I'm talking about it as well. So Kevin, my business partner over here on the side, will be passing it around. Just feel free to dump it at the end, you know. And we have a little thing for you at the end of the talk that I can that we'll hand out, or people can take as you leave. So this is a little description that we wrote about our studio. It is so heavy that it's always scary to read this and go, is that what we do? Is that, it's something a little scary sometimes to kind of live up to. But we are, GDLOFT, the studio that I found, is primarily print. We do no web work whatsoever. We tried, we suck at it. We're terrible. We are terrible. Web takes a different kind of, I think, approach. Not so much thinking, but approach, a different business approach that I really don't get. And it never ends. That's one of the reasons I hate to do it. It just never ends. With print, it's printed, done. Wait till the next revision of that, then we can fix that typo. So that's why, primarily one of the reasons I love print. So this is our studio. This is us. There's Kevin on the side of me. I'm in the middle, and I have a young designer, Chelsea, that works for me. And it's primarily us, and we have two interns. So as a professor, I get free labor in that way. So, but I teach them stuff at least. So. This month, if you guys get How Magazine, we're actually featured in How Magazine this month, which is quite an honor. They focused on the city of Philadelphia this month and looked at the design scene here. And we were interviewed and highlighted as one of the up-and-coming studios in the city, or at least a studio that, I never thought when I started it could make an influence in the city itself. So we're really excited about that. So that'll be my last plug, I swear. Anyway, so here's some little key things that will come in and out. So I'm not really here to kind of discount or dismiss digital media. I think it's so important that those two worlds kind of work together. I think what's happening, though, is that a lot of companies are just kind of dismissing print media because of the expense. And it's much easier to do digital media. So our studio takes this platform where we're like, well, you need both. You really need both. But you also have to think about print in a different way. It can't be the traditional ways that you're thinking about it. So that's something that we push. A lot of the work that you'll see today is a variety of work. The way we think about design too spans. It goes from books to brochures to forms to some of it even has an interactive component that we'll talk about too, that I'll talk a little bit about. So 76% of businesses say that their ideal marketing strategy encompasses a combination of both print and digital communication. I think hopefully, you can see that perspective. I think you need both those things. And 67% of online action is actually driven by offline messages, meaning that people get postcards or even a little physical thing that says, oh, here's the website. Here's a way to remember us. So, these are just little facts that I think that influence the way we look at print. And from the kind of science way of things, one of the most important things about print is touch, that you can physically touch these things. I think for me, I'm not really interested in making something that doesn't take up space. I want the thing that I make to take up a bit of space next to you, around you, on your bookshelf, on your desk, and it keeps me there. It keeps me in your face, right? I mean, that's really one of the important points for me with print. But again, human touch represents a powerful form of nonverbal communication. More than half our brain focuses on touch for learning. This is from David Eagleman. Has anyone heard of David Eagleman? He actually has a great TED Talk about touch and the brain. And he actually started writing about, the tactility of things and how those things are kind of promoting learning and promoting a way of learning about your environment. So he is amazing. You should definitely check it out. So you can see that touch, this idea of materiality is really coming back in culture. I don't know how many of you guys wedding invitations that are done with letterpress. Letterpress is an old school type of printing methodology, but it's coming back. Everywhere you go, people are really using letterpressing. Designers out there, have you seen tons of letterpress coming back around? There's so many, at least in Philadelphia, there's so many shops that are bringing back this technology. So here are some examples of that. I'm sure you've seen it in wedding invitations, and even gig posters are being done in letterpress. And again, that tactility of the printing is really something that people are really drawn to. We actually have a letterpress in our own studio that we play around with. This is our little press that we use. And the other thing, I think the biggest example right now is the resurgence of records. I mean, there's tons of record stores everywhere. I mean, even in our studio, we have 2 record players, but we're constantly, again, the physicality of the album. I mean, when it went digitized, I mean, how many of you remember not being able to look at liner notes or enjoy the actual physical thing anymore? And I remember when the transition to CD, it was that, the scale of it as well. So this resurgence of records is definitely something that kind of promotes this. People's want for the touch, the physical thing, the material thing. People understand and remember what they read on paper better than what they read on screen. Researchers think that the physicality of the paper explains this. You know, that can be contested, but you know, I do think having that physical thing again in front of you is really part of the learning mechanism. Consumers are more engaged when reading print materials, unlike websites, which are often skimmed as little as 15 seconds. You know, I think that's true. I think from our own experiences, that's something that we could see. So here's a project our first project that we kind of did, a redesign of the form for pen. Some people might think, oh, what a kind of boring project. For me, it's one of my favorite projects to do, that I did. The reason being is that I think the design before really didn't think about the audience. I mean, I know we talk about audience a lot. But what was interesting about this is Penn only thought about the student for the longest time and the student filling this out. But really, the parents were doing it. You know, half the parents were doing these things, and they couldn't even figure it out. So we kind of, you know, we created just really simple mechanisms, just like color, typography, like a larger typeface in certain areas that would pertain to the parents as opposed to the student. I know these things probably sound really simple, but it's amazing sometimes how we as designers or even maybe writers sometimes forget about how much the audience really designs the design for us. So that's where we, you know, that project for me was really something special. And it really allowed you to kind of think about something. Again, thinking about all the different scenarios of when they might even use the form. You know, so that's something that we really thought of. Because at one point we were even thinking about the size of the form. Should it be even smaller or should it be larger even? I mean, think about where the audience is actually going to use this thing. What type of desk? Where are they at? You know, so these are things we kind of thought about. So a lot of the work that we also do is influenced by theory. And I'll get into this a little bit more. But Walter Benjamin, a major theoretician in art criticism, has this thing called aura. And aura is about that kind of je ne sais quoi thing that a painting has, a one-off has. Like, so, you know, a painting, there's only one of it, so it has aura. It has this specialness that will never exist again. The problem that I always had as a graphic designer was that I made things that had supposedly no aura, that you could just throw it away after you kind of consumed it and it was gone. I think in grad school, I was really, really pissed off about this kind of idea. Like, you spend so much time and investment in these projects, and then at the end of it, it's consumed and then disposed of, and as little as like 10 seconds sometimes. So I really wanted to go against that. I wanted to see, can I bring aura into a field like graphic design or work like graphic design when it's mass produced, where there's 1,000 of the same thing or 500 of the same thing? Can I kind of capture aura in that work? So one of the examples, we just recently did this tight deadline kind of thing. We were asked to design a postcard, poster, bus shelter poster for a show called The Shape of Things. So in this play, the main character vandalizes a gallery. So all we did was reenact that scene to every postcard and every poster. So we actually became actors as designers. Again, this is not brain science, it's just kind of looking at the content, and the content actually told us what to do. So all of these, we just kind of put on in the studio, and we vandalized them just like the main character vandalized the gallery in the play. And it rings true to the content and, you know, again, creates a certain sense of aura. Each one is an original now. Each one, the way that we touch or spray on the piece of paper, the pressure and things will be totally different. So for me, that kind of brings that in. Here's just a little video of us doing that. Oh, maybe it's not going to work. Sorry. All right. So the endowment effect. I don't know if, as I'm sure there's some economics person in here, so please don't take this for word. I'm using a little. So the endowment effect is a psychology of behavioral economics. Endowment effect is the hypothesis that people ascribe more value to things really because they own them. Touching and the physical nature of things enhance this effect. And, you know, so again, this is connected to some of the works that David Eagleman has done, the neuroscientist. But we can see this effect in like almost everyday things. Selling a house, which I'm doing right now, you always think it's more valued than what it actually is, right? Because you own it, it's physical, you have memories to it, there's something you connected to it. And you know, it's more valuable because of that. And the other thing is credit cards versus a dollar bill. If you have physical money, you know, you have a tendency to want to keep that as opposed to like, you know, when you have a credit card psychologically, it's just so much, it's immaterial. You don't see it. So it's so much easier to just kind of buy and purchase large purchases. So this is kind of that effect. So it's kind of these immaterial, you know, the immateriality of something kind of makes us not value it as much. So this is I was asked to, I do some fine artwork as well. I was asked to show at a gallery, a photo gallery. And this is a piece that I did. It's called Enjoy the View, and it's a Google search. What I did is I Google searched a Britney Spears lyric, I must confess, I still believe. All these little lyrics that I do pick for everything really always kind of connects to my methodology. This is so this top row is the Google search for the word I. The second row is must. The third row is confess. I still believe. So what I wanted to do, it was a photo gallery that asked me to show work. What I wanted to do was kind of materialize the web. And I actually also wanted to materialize meaning. What's interesting is when I searched the word confess at that time, Tiger Woods was just caught in so in confess, for that day, it was all Tiger Woods images when I did the Google search. But if you do the Google search 2 days later, it's gone. The word confess already has a totally different visual and contextual meaning, cultural meaning. So this piece that I do, galleries have asked me to do it, but it's very based on time. It's about that particular moment that I do the search and what images mean at that time and what words mean at that time, you know? So it's a special piece, pain in the ass to put on the wall. They're all pinned one by one, so when you walk through them, they kind of ripple, is something that I really wanted to do. And there are 5,000 images so for this particular thing. And Google does end. I found that out because I thought, oh my God, I'm just going to keep printing and cutting, but it ends at some point. So whatever we had was what Google gave us, and thank God there was an ending. That's all I can say. So again, in this idea of immaterial versus material, I was asked to create a conference identity. very much similar to this, where leaders from around the country came to Philadelphia. It's for an organization called American Institute of Graphic Arts. It's the Philadelphia chapter. And they have a leadership retreat where all the leaders from the area, from the United States, come to a particular city, and they have a conference. And it was, we were hosting it. Philadelphia was hosting it. I was a little, what I didn't like was that the membership wasn't allowed to interact with these leaders. You know, we're part of this organization, but the leaders were in this special kind of conference, and the members of the Philadelphia chapter really get to interact with them. So I was really interested in how I could represent the members. So the conference title was called Forward. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll go to AIGA events and I'll have AIGA members draw me an arrow. So I collected all the arrows from members, and that became the identity of the conference. And what was kind of interesting is that it represents each of the members in Philadelphia. So now the leaders are in some ways interacting with them in some way, right? They're represented metaphorically through all these different arrows that they've drawn. This is how the identity kind of played out through the materials and the collateral that we had to design. There were buttons, and there were individual postcards of these certain arrows, but the name tags, each one was a different arrow. I used variable data printing at this time. It was available before that. I changed, each of these arrows would change, and they had the name of the member that drew the arrow. So each of you guys, if you were at this conference, would actually represent a member in the Philadelphia organization. So here's some of the signage for that. And here's them using it, you know, pretty fun. And that's me as Ben Franklin. And Facing Boundaries, we do a lot of art catalogs. Again, the projects that I'm showing are really my fun projects, right? I mean, you could see, I'll show you our website. They're not all this fun. But this catalog for me was also a really kind of fun project. I was really interested in how I can get the viewer to finish my work. So effacing means destroy. So you were given this catalog, or this is the catalog that you were given when you got to the show. You'll find that you can't turn the pages, and they're perforated on the edges. So what you needed to do was rip these edges. Again, kind of using the actual title very literally, meaning destroy the boundary. These were works that really kind of transcend different disciplines in art. So I really I was interested in how can I get the viewer to kind of finish the piece? Again, if I get them to finish the piece, they'll want to keep it, and it's more connected to them. This is theirs, and it's not mine anymore. So yeah, we're using a straight edge here, but they were perforated, so you can just kind of rip the edges of them. If you chose not to, it also became a poster that was a collection of all the works in the show. So it looked kind of like that when it was flat. And here's the back of that as well. So going back to some little things that also encourage us, or we think about in print. Many research say that reading on screen encourages a particular style of reading called nonlinear reading, basically skimming. Nonlinear reading might especially hurt what researchers call deep reading, or our in-depth reading of text that requires intense focus to fully understand it. I mean, I know for a fact, for me, I have such a hard time reading a novel in digital form. And I think it's because of that. There is this kind of really difficult way. I can't process it in the same way that I can in a physical book. I was just reading, and I'm sorry I'm even admitting this, but I just read that book, The Girl on the Train. And I just needed something that I could read that would clear my mind. I actually bought first the digital version thinking, oh, I will you know, it must be me being kind of like stubborn and not wanting to read the book or read it on my iPad. And I just couldn't get through it. There's something about the physicality of this, having the book and turning the page, that when I bought the actual physical thing, I finished it in like 2 days. You know, it's interesting, and I think scientists, especially this Dr. Eagleson, definitely has looked into this. And skimming is fine for our emails, right? And it's really not fine for like larger forms of reading. You can't skim a form. You can't skim brochures that are really going to affect you in some ways. So here are some examples where we kind of broke down that kind of process. Perfect Printing asked us, a printing company started to move into advertising. They said, oh, look, we're going to have an in-house thing, and we're going to design too, and we're going to print. So they asked us to create just a thick book that kind of showed their whole, or talked about their whole process. And here's an example when sometimes the client doesn't know exactly what they want. Or most clients will come to you and say, we need a poster. And then you ask why? Well, because they did a poster and they have a postcard, so that's what we need. But, you know, again, if they analyze the audience, but if they analyze the information, they would realize that all this information that they had was way, way too dense in some ways. So how do you get them to absorb that text? What I had proposed is a series of books that kind of break down their process and make the viewer experience the process with them. So every month they were sent one part of their process in their book. And this book also became a type of journal. It had blank pages in there that they could take notes about that you know, the different questions or the different statements that was brought into these different parts of the process. And what's interesting now is to see designers and other, you know, clients of Perfect, or people that we're given to, use them every day. Even if it's not for this purpose, they still are connected to it, they still have it, and they still use it. You know, so the Perfect name is still in front of them, and getting the name, you know, getting their work across to their clients, even if they're not using them as a printer. But it was a series of books that were kind of bound. The same thing, the Pew Institute asked us to design. They know we're a little bit ridiculous with some of the things that we do. So we were asked to design a catalog for them. They wanted a traditional catalog. And I wanted to create something that was a little ridiculous, that really, so ridiculous that no printer wanted to put it together, unfortunately. We had to put this together by hand. And luckily, they only had like 1,500 of these, but we still did it. My interns are awesome, I'm telling you. They get paid in food. They love it. So this is a book that actually comes apart and comes together. I wanted to have a book that kind of broke apart and come together, but that you can also use it individually. Each of the different sizes represents a project that was related to the effort, called No Ideas Too Ridiculous. Basically, the Pew gave curators, I think it was like $1,000 to put on a show, an exhibition, which is ridiculous in terms of budget. So these were the results. These were the projects. And what I wanted to do was for them to be able to use it individually, but also send it together as one book. So there was a whole bunch of these that were stapled together to create a cohesive cover. But they were also, the Pew also had a bunch of these that were individual, that they can use on an individual basis and say, hey, here's a project that you should see, and they didn't have to give out all of the kind of handmade, put together books. So this is what it kind of looked like at the side. And they also were mailed in like these clear plastic bags. So Naomi S. Barron, an American university linguistics, is studying digital communication among millennials, which is really interesting to me. As a teacher, it's amazing to see, you know, how kids really process information, especially millennials. I hate to sound old, but that's a whole generation that I never really get. They're really weird. They're just like, they just, examples are you do a group project, they never talk, they email each other. And at presentation, they'll come and they're like, well, we didn't really get to talk. We emailed each other. So this woman, Naomis Research, is studying more about the digital communication that these millennials undertake. Her research reveals a particular irony in the internet age that digital natives prefer reading in print. And it's kind of interesting to see that even with my own students. My students in themselves, maybe they're art majors or maybe they're graphic designers, they're more visuals, but they refuse to take online classes because they say they can't process the same way that they can when a person is physically in front of them. So I thought, when I read this, I thought, oh yeah, maybe this is exactly true. So here's a series of quotes from her research that millennials have given her. Print takes me longer because I have to read it more carefully. I thought that was good. I don't absorb as much on screen. It's harder to keep my place online. Millennials regularly tell her that they prefer print because it's easier to follow stories. Pew studies show that the highest print readership right now is among 18 to 29, which I thought was really kind of interesting. And she finds these interesting results that when it comes to multitasking and being on screen, that if you have a physical hard copy, most people won't go and check their emails or answer their phone or can put it down, while if they are reading on screen or doing work on screen, they have the tendency to kind of go onto Facebook, go onto Tumblr, check an email. I mean, how many times, I know in my own experience, I can't get through a paragraph sometimes if I'm on screen because I got to see what's happening on Instagram, or something. So, so I thought, these are really kind of interesting ideas. This kind of connects to reading structures for us. I've done a series of projects where I kind of not so much challenge the reading structures, but I play around with the reading structures, as simple as grid. We were asked to design a logo for a contemporary art show that was going between Israel and the United States, and it was a simple logo. This was the logo we came up with because the logo had to be in Hebrew and it also had to be in English, and one had to be highlighted. This is the logo when it's in Israel, and this is where it's in the United States. And that simple movement of that logo is actually the structure of the book. The grid, which I'll show, actually constantly changes on each page based on that logo. And we have a little, hopefully, this movie. So all of the placement is based on where that X is on that page. Hopefully this works, but. So here's the grid. Here's the original logo. Here's how online it moved that way. And here's the actual structure of the book. And you'll see that the X constantly moves page per page. The apex of the middle of the X will constantly move. So we react to the text in that way. So where images are in relation, and text are in relation to the logo itself. The same kind of thing happened for this catalog we did for a contemporary women's show. I was really, you get into really dangerous territory if you start to, it's a feminist show, and what do you show as an image? And then as a male designing a book for a feminist show, I just didn't want to get into that. So I just used the text. The text became like the actual design of it. But the structure in the text is a little bit complicated. And the viewer doesn't always get it, which is what I like. I like the idea. You can still read it. If you go into the book, it looks like a traditional grid. For me as the designer, the complexity comes in the use of simple things just like the folios. It's coming around, but if you look at the page numbers, it constantly shifts based on the subject matter of that page. It's based on these themes. I made a grid that has themes connected to it, and the page number will just shift based on that theme and that grid. You know, will the audience get it? No, but for me as a designer, it allowed the actual process to be interesting. But I think what's more interesting is when the viewer finds it after looking at that book like the 10th time, that they see something is a little bit odd, and they keep coming back to it to try to figure it out. As simple as that little shift. And you'll also see the headline kind of shifts depending on that grid as well. This is a book, it's more of a personal book. It's more of a culmination of all the work that I've done as a tenured professor. One of the most daunting things is to come up for tenure. And what they want is your whole life and career history in some documentation form. The process is hell. So I wanted a book that really reflected this awfulness. So awful process. It's a book you rip. So I gave these books. Part of the tenure process is that your work goes to, at Rutgers, 15 people in the world that does not know a thing about you, and they have to write a recommendation that you are making a difference in your field. So that's what they want. So we had to somehow kind of document all the work for these people. And mine took the shape of a book that came together, but you had to rip it apart to access the information. You read it simultaneously, and the actual text actually went over the edge of the page. I just thought, well, hell, if I'm going to work, you're going to work at getting this too. That's all I thought. I really did, I swear. It was awful. So I made a bunch of these books, and we still have a bunch of them, which I love. And that also is coming around. So the last part of my talk is about theory. I love theory. I love like being inspired by kind of criticism, personal criticism, theoretical criticism. One of the things that I learned when I was in grad school that I really found was writings of this theorist called Guy Debord. And this movement called the situationist movement that happened in the late 50s and 1960s. And it was kind of a way to rebel. It was a way to rebel against the complacency of every day. The idea that people just kind of go to work and you do your work and then you go home and you don't even pay attention to the things that are surrounding you. So this piece of writing, The Society of the Spectacle really talks about the spectacle is the mass media, basically, in this. And mass media's part in making us these kind of drones, right? I mean, from things like technology, I mean, the iPhone alone in itself like turns us into little zombies. And this was written in the 1950s, 60s, and he was talking about how, you know, consumerism and technology and things like that will in the future really control a lot of what you do. And what media is doing is creating these spectacles to control you, right? So I was really interested in this. I'm like, I can't believe this was written in the 1960s and it's happening now. So these mirages of real life. This was one of the covers of his book for that. The idea that we're controlled by media, you know, we're like these kind of zombies just watching ahead. So situationists, this group would create these situations. What they would do is they would follow or study the patterns of businessmen in Paris. They would follow where they would go to get to work. They would actually find their pattern of how they got to their business buildings from the subway to the business building. Then what they would do is screw that up. They would put logs in the way of the pattern. And what was interesting is that these businessmen look like a bunch of ants going, where do I go now? Like, where is this Like, so the point was, it made these people look at their environment for the first time again. Like, you can go this way now, not that way. You can look at this in a different way. They also did it to tourists, where they would give them wrong maps of the city. So they gave them wrong maps of Paris, where they actually had to go into non-tourist areas. So they can experience the city in a whole different light, not through commercialism, not going to the Eiffel Tower. They would get them in places that were off the beaten path, especially for tourists. So I really love this kind of methodology, and I thought, well, that's definitely something that I could bring into the way I make work. I mean, can my work in some ways be a distraction of your everyday? Where we look at the distraction as a bad thing, can the distraction be a really good thing? Where can it make you stop in your tracks for just a minute and give you some time where you're absorbed into something? So and in connection to this kind of thinking and Walter Benjamin's ideas of aura that I talked about in the beginning, I've made, a lot of my work carries this kind of ideas throughout. And these, I think, are better examples or more visual examples of this. Paper architecture, we were asked to create a catalog. We were also asked to be part of the show. Me being like, I don't want to do double the work, let's find a way that the two things can kind of live together. So the catalog itself is our work, but it also served as the catalog for the show. We asked the viewers to design the cover. So all it was is a die-cut square where people just kind of folded the edges and you made your own designs. It's a paper architecture show, so that was also our contribution to the show. And all we really had to do is just sign it and number it. So then it felt kind of, I don't know, art, I guess. So we just numbered 200 of them and we made our own covers. But it's, again, it's a very traditional book. It's just that the cover in itself asks the viewer to finish the work as well. And here's the pile of stuff that we made. Philadelphia, AIGA is a constant kind of client for us, and we were asked to design their awards identity. In this project, we also asked the viewer to kind of construct or finish the work. It's basically the language. I took the top 10 slogans to making work, like motivational factors to making work. And I just kind of visualized them, but the thing was, you had to kind of take this little brochure apart to get another piece if you wanted. The form had to come out anyway, so if you took the form out, the damn thing fell apart anyway. So I thought, like, well, here, you can make a poster with it. Again, it's a little distraction. It's a little piece that maybe me as a designer can just give you back in terms of time for yourself. Does everyone do it? I don't know, but I know we did get a bunch of people that did post on social media to just show that they did it. These were the invites. These actually showed you the winners, but blown up to the point that you can't distinguish the winners. Each invitation actually was a different set of winners. All I did was manipulate the programming in our printer's way of doing things. I kind of screwed it up a little bit. So each one, the layout is actually based on the zip code. So the numbers on the zip code actually correlated with an image, and they would put them on the page. And so every zip code, certain people had the same one, in the same zip code, but then it changed on certain ones. And last, this is for that competition, I really wanted to push this idea of aura. I think one of the things that are problematic, or not problematic, with design competitions is we never really memorialize the losers. I was really interested in the people that didn't win. How do we kind of show them? Because every catalog is about the winner. So what I did was I limited the print run to the number of entries, And in that year, they had 500 and something entries. So I only made that number of books to memorialize each person that entered the competition. But then I changed each color of the book 1% lighter. So it went through Roy G. Biv. This was a lot of math that, that actually my students figured out. So each one actually is an original. Again, the idea of aura, that each piece is an original piece. I knew this was going to be in a gallery, so the way that the catalogs were displayed was on a shelf, so you saw the spectrum of color, but as people took them away, that sculpture, the idea that book can be sculpture, kind of got destroyed, and it never, ever will happen again. It's almost like this kind of performance piece. And here are all the numbers, and all the entry numbers and the colors that memorialize them. And here are just some of the inside spreads of the winners of the book, winners of the competition. And the title actually happens on the edge of the book as opposed to the cover. Sorry, this is the last piece. AIGA Space, again, a constant client of ours asked us to design the identity for their actual gallery. The idea of space for me means nothing unless people use the space. So the logo is constantly changing. It's a bunch of symbols that metaphorically represent what the space can be used for, or even physical or iconic representations of space. So this is what, we designed the little inside of this place. The logos appeared on the screen. I think the most interesting part of this project, though, is how people interact with the logo when you're in this space. I'm sorry, it's a little dark. So when people are actually physically in this space, there's a motion sensor that circulates the logos around. When the space is not in use, it stays still. So the activity of this space is constantly being redefined, rediscovered when they're in the actual space. So that was a monitor that was actually in the gallery space, that when people were there to see shows or in a meeting, that would constantly change. So that's kind of it in terms of the work that I really wanted to show you. But this is one thing that I'd love to keep with you, that, one thing that I love about print is I know that I'm so busy that I live multiple lives, and I'm sure you guys do too. One of the things that I love about print is that it slows me down. I really have to I have to be there with it. Again, like a novel, it just slows me down, and I love thinking about that. This is one of the quotes the millennials gave, Naomi, and it said, "I like the feeling of it. I like holding it. I'm not going off, and it's not going off, and it's not making sounds." I mean, I thought that was really pretty funny. It's true, though. I mean, God, sometimes you just want to get rid of your iPhone. And the things that I tell my students, reject the ephemeral. Reject that the thing that you made can be thrown away. Can you fight that? Is there a way that you can fight that? Even can the thing that you make live longer than it's expected to? And the worst thing is complacency. Once you're okay with it, time to move on. Keep going. Like, it means, like, if it's too easy, it's not good, So, and it's something that I try to instill to my students, and I try to instill in the studio environment as well, and the work that we make. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate you guys listening to, I don't know, this stuff that I just talked about. Thank you. I guess I could do Q&A. Oh, Kevin's telling. We made posters. Again, pop music is a huge part of our work. It's a tribute to David Bowie. We love David Bowie. It's a series, but if you can see, it looks like, it's in the back right there, it looks like nothing. You just got to come up to it, and you'll see that something reveals itself in the work. So again, hopefully you keep going back to it and you find something new to the piece. So they're up there for anyone who wants to take one. So feel free to take those, please. But yep,
Thank you. Thanks so much. That was fascinating. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your process? When you sit down with a client and they come to you and maybe they say, I want a brochure or a book or a poster, and what process do you go through with the client?
Yeah, I mean, it's very traditional in the process. So only, like, again, if they call us, we meet with them, we ask them what they want, and that's where I always get a little bit weary. It's what they want half the time, because again, they don't know they only want what they see. And then, so that meeting is usually, I don't say it right away though. I let them talk. I ask about their audience. I ask I ask them, what is it going to be used for? I ask them, where is it going to go ultimately? Do you want them to keep this thing? Is this something that's only going to be for this event? Do you see it going beyond? And a lot of the, organizations we work with are nonprofits. So, they have very tight budgets. So I always try to find a way to kind of extend the piece that they're doing, or I think about that right away when I'm talking to the client. Again, I don't reveal all of these things till I actually show them the design. I mean, after Kevin does his job of making sure they want to pay, and to make sure that they have money for printing, which always seems to be something that's forgotten. But it's a very traditional process in the way that we meet clients, but I think it's more the way we think about their input, like what they're talking about. I think, again, because I'm always a little weary that they think they know what they want, but they don't. So always questioning about like the use of it. Where is it going to go? Who's going to get this at the end? Will this happen again next year? Is there ways that we can show the history of this thing through the thing that we're making? Maybe this could be a larger part of something else. So that's where I think it's just a little bit different, but our process is no different than your process in that way. Yeah, so I don't know if that makes it any clearer, but yeah.
That's something that we try to do in our work, is like employ this tactical deftness.
Yeah.
So the client comes to us and like, we want a brochure, we want this videotape. And so
Yeah.
we start asking those same questions. You're right, there is a lot of, and I'm on the editorial side, I'm not on the design side.
Yeah.
So it's like, who's your audience? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And then get to that common understanding. Let's talk about the tactics, the
Yeah.
actual vehicle of product work.
And the problem always is the client never has enough time to want to talk about those things, or things have to be done tomorrow, or we need to just get this out, and we do that. But sometimes there's the projects where we have to say, you got to slow down, because this is not, we can't do this in like 2 days. We could do it maybe in 4, but we still have to talk about these like things that are really, really important. And it's not to say we get killed by clients. We do. We're not any different than any of you guys. We definitely, clients like sometimes berate us and have their way. But, it's, again, like what I'm showing you is probably the highlights, but there's always ways to always embed things in the work, or finding that personal to just get through the work, I think, is really kind of important as well. But yeah, I don't know if that helps.
I have a fairly obscure question for you. If I was talking to your mother right now, what is the one word she would have used to describe you as a child?
Crazy. Crazy. They think I'm crazy still. They really do. When I was a teenager, they made me go see a psychologist because something is wrong with you. They like, something is wrong. Yeah, they're crazy. They definitely think I'm crazy. I don't think they even get what I do. That's the funniest part. In that book that's going around, the orange book, the first line says, my mom thinks I draw and Like, that's all I do is I draw on the computer. And they call me to make cards for some reason, like a Christmas, can you make a Christmas card? I'm like, Walmart has it for $2. So, yeah, crazy. Thanks. That's an awesome question. No one's ever asked. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm a web developer by trade, so I work in the intangible and the ephemeral.
Yeah.
And I think that what you do is, what your studio does is captivating and intensely beautiful. And I think it's awesome that you passed out this stuff for us to touch and for us to look at, because that really just made the moment right there. So
Thank you, man.
keep being crazy.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for coming. But how long did it? I'm right here. I'm sorry.
I was like, what the
I
hell?
got one of your books here.
All right.
So, are you comfortable in your own skin right now with this whole thing of like I'm gonna only do print, and when did that like come to you and say, this is how it's gonna be for me?
Great question. I am comfortable in this because we fired a bunch of clients to do it. We made the choice here, like, 5 or 6 years ago when we had a web project that was just terrible. It just, again, I just don't have the mind for it. The way to kind of manage that kind of project, I thought was like, we were constantly doing websites and constantly doing print at the same time, when I just said, it's enough of this. We were losing money every time we made a website, again, because of my incompetence to know how to project manage or things like that. But I also, didn't know how to talk to the clients about those things. I hit 40 and I said, fuck it, this is what I'm gonna do. I just all I do. This is all I do. I think we all, for you guys who are older, I think you come to 40 and you're like, screw this, man, this is what I am. So I'm just, all we do, the weirdest thing though, is when we cut out web, we doubled our clients. We're known to only do print. They come to us when they want, like, of course we do postcards and stuff, but we're always called that studio. Oh, you want something different? They do that kind of thing. So I'd rather have that, yeah.
You're a nut. You're crazy. You're just.
I am, I'm telling you, I'm a little, as the people that work with me, I'm a little crazy, I think, yeah. Thank you, though. Sorry, was I allowed to curse during the web feed? I said I wouldn't either. My bad. Oh.
Whoa, it is loud. So you were saying, I'm over here.
Oh, there you go. Oh, sorry.
You were saying about the, I don't know, we kind of lag behind the real world when it comes to digital and print and everything. I find central banks, I don't know if that's what everyone else thinks. We're talking about sort of moving to digital, and when you're talking about the resurgence of vinyl, we were talking about that at lunch before.
Yeah.
Is print going to make a sort of comeback in a different form very soon, and we'll just get rid of print and we'll be behind again? Because is it just...
Is it cyclical, like bell-bottom pants?
Because are we just thinking about print the wrong way, and maybe we just shouldn't be doing printed annual reports, so maybe we just think about a creative way of redoing it now, as opposed to getting rid of it and then bringing it back?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, it's constant change. I mean, it's funny that Madonna was the title of the, but I mean, like, using her as a metaphor, the idea of metamorphosis and kind of constantly changing, right? I think, yeah, I really think print will not go away. It's a human kind of interaction with a physical thing. It's like us in front of each other. I just think people got enamored by certain things, which we always do. And we forget about that. It's that, then we go, oh yeah, that was pretty, I still have that, and it's still pretty cool, and I still really love it. I think it's just, first, I just don't think print will it's not like records. I mean, it did go away for a little bit back, and then now it's back. But I think with print, with all those, even those little antidotes and tidbits of facts that I've given, I just don't think it'll ever go away.
Because printed books are making a comeback now as well.
Yeah,
I mean, I prefer
know.
reading a book than reading an EPUB or something.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So-
And again, I think it's a very human thing. I really think it's because it's so, I mean, maybe people do it. I mean, I know for me, it's so hard to read something on a screen. And it could be the typography, it could be the contrast of light, it could be like all these things. But I think what is happening now is we are equating the screen with a very small, minute amount of time. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of this, like I said, it's purely distractive. Like, you know, like, I don't know.
Well, I like the bit you had on, I don't know, digital is good for consuming email sort of content. It's data, like raw facts,
Yeah.
short bits of information it's great for.
Yeah.
Finding out random facts about cats and whatever it may be
Exactly.
is perfect. And print version of that would be awful.
Yeah.
But for something like a story or something that you really need to sort of understand and get the sort of emotional side of it, then
Yeah.
you can't replicate that as
even-
well, I don't think.
Even forms. I can't tell you how many times I had to do the form just to get the payment here because I kept screwing it up. It was a PDF, and then I kept missing certain parts. But then I printed it out and filled it in. I was like, oh, I kept missing that little part right there. It's just, I don't know. I think we're just starting to be conditioned in that way. In the same way that we used to be conditioned with like, now like mail, like even getting mail is very exciting for me. Like you go home and you check the physical thing and you're like, oh, it's from Comcast, but I still like it. It's here. I could open it up. And it's the same thing with bills. I constantly miss bills that are on sent to me. But if it's the physical bill, I know I pay it. But it's that kind of thing. I just think we need print. We need it, you know.
Allan, I have a question right over to your right. Your one-off pieces and your own aura are very inspirational. As a designer, I thank you because we do a lot of charts and graphs and things. So this stuff is extremely creative for us to help us think about how we can expand our own design within the Fed. But my question is, so those projects that you work on that are have a high quantity of prints being done, and the client might want something beyond print that expands into the digital format, how do you approach those type of projects? Do you work with another agency, or is that just something that GDLOFT is going to pass on?
No, we depending on the project, depending on the budgets, a lot of these clients come to us thinking that they can get the world for like $5, you know? So, no, we work with another, we have various people that, or studios that we can pass that work to. We collaborate with them. Usually the print pieces happen first, and then the digital pieces, and most of the projects that we do that have digital components, so we kind of define things, or we define the concept, we design the ideas, and while we're doing the print piece, we get ideas of how the web part or the interactive part might be. Yeah, I mean, but money is, we have to pay, there's salaries to be paid. So we will take a job that, but we only do the print part, and they pay that other studio the money separately from us. We usually don't, we collaborate conceptually on the visuals and things like that, but other than that, they're independent, we're independent, and they're recommended by us, though, yeah, yep.
Yeah, so the default Federal Reserve design toolkit is eagles, columns, marble, navy blue, and gray. If you had the Federal Reserve as a client, how would you sort of counsel widening that toolbox but still giving it the, feel of something appropriate for a Federal Reserve Bank?
I'm going to plead the, I'll get back to you on that one. How about that?
Yes, I have a comment. Can you find me?
Oh, there you go. Hi.
I just wanted to point out the irony. I love how you are involved with the tangible world around you and that you kept getting this Google prompt in virtual world.
So annoying.
Just wanted to point that out. I just got a kind of a personal work question about compromise. When you know a client is in front of you and you're like, okay, they're not going to transition to what I'm seeing or what I'm envisioning. What's tougher to do, to say no to something like that or say no to what you really want to do? I mean, you get what I'm saying? There's an interpersonal compromise versus you ain't.
Oh, yeah. I think that's, it's definitely a struggle because not everyone's going to see your perspective, you know? Is one easier or the other is the question? Or would, I'm sorry? Yeah, well, you always have to, this is design and it's commerce. You always have to sacrifice things. I think that's part of the process. I mean, even with these projects, there's definitely things that were sacrificed. They were crazier than maybe what they were. But in terms of, you know, I'm kind of real about it. If I take on a client and from the start, I know they're not open to our perspective, I will either tell them, like, have you seen the work that we do? And if so, why did, you know, like, we just to ask, like, why did you choose us still? And we've had clients like that say, oh, we love your creativity, and we love that to be part of it. And then you try, and they're like, no. They're just constantly, no. It ultimately becomes a financial choice. It has to be at the end of it. I own a business. I have to pay these guys. I have to make sure within a year that we have projects that are like this, like a couple of them, because, you know, and then the other projects have to be things that I have to sacrifice the creativity sometimes and bring in money, you know, and just bring in things. But if I'm going to bring in money, I don't want it to take too much time. So that's one of the criteria. If I'm not like allowed to bring in my creativity, I just want to make sure this is done and quick and we could get it out the door. That's what I kind of do as a strategy. I bring it in, you know, you always try to add what you can, and usually there's those clients that just don't want it. But then we just get it out the door, get it printed, go on to the next kind of project. And hopefully you can embed something in that. But yeah, we've done some crazy things where clients who really piss us off, there's really some little messages sometimes that you can't see with the naked eye that we've done, that I've done, that these guys don't ever know about, but I've done it. Even that poster has a little. Oh yeah.
I want one. Everything you showed us is paper. Do you ever use any other medium like fabric or glass or anything?
No, not by choice. I just don't think I've ever had a project that allowed for that. Though I do a lot of fine artwork. I actually show a lot. I show at galleries and things. I'm doing a project now with a major museum to do a piece. But those pieces, I get into different mediums. Like I have an art piece that actually uses rice as an adhesive to paper. Only because I'm Asian. When I grew up, rice is a staple in my culture. It went back to a childhood memory. My mom ran out of glue, so she used sticky rice to glue things. It was so embarrassing to come to, the Asian girl knows. She says yes. She used sticky rice, and then when I got to school, everything fell off, like because it dried up and fell off. And I do use different material. I do a piece in galleries where these letters kind of fall off. They start as like language, like sentences. And then during the month that they're up, each letter falls and it becomes gibberish. But I do use materials in that. In other pieces, I've used like large format vinyl. I've used, I haven't used like fabric though, but it's mostly in that fine artwork that I'll get to. We use 3D technology for a cover for a catalog that I didn't show. That we were able to, it was only because the client had a 3D printer they were excited to use. We're like, well, let's use the damn thing and then we'll make a cover. And we glued these things on top of the printed covers, which were kind of nice. But I would love to. I actually think, you just saying that, I think I should make something in glass, like for a piece or something. Usually artists are, like when you get an artist catalog to do. But I'll tell you, these things look cool. Artists are the worst people to work with. They're the worst. They think, they always say they're collaborative. They always say, oh, I want your vision to be in there too. They don't. They do not. They don't care about your vision. They want theirs, always, always. So those catalogs are the ones that we got along with. We've done other catalogs for artists, and seriously, they just don't want to hear you sometimes. They lie. They really lie.
So you've talked a lot about the differences between print and digital, and that really resonates with me, the differences between handling something physically. So you focus on the printed physical side of things.
Yeah.
When you are looking at a web page or things that people have designed on the digital side of things, are there any lessons that you sometimes think they need to think more in the way I do about printed media, and if only they thought that way, this would be a better digital product?
Well, yeah. I also get cues from, it's vice versa sometimes, right? I mean, but I do. I think about that. Like, I think about, like, I guess why I'm not, like, as interested in the web is, like, in terms of the 5 senses, it only, like, touches on a couple of them. Like, smell would be awesome for a website to do somehow. Or like, I start thinking about, like, how can it kind of incite that? How can it incite tactility, I don't always have suggestions to how they do it, but I start to think about those things because I'm so rooted in print. I think that's what I kind of like, am not resistant, but I just don't like web as much because of that. It's missing some of the senses that I like from print. And I do think about, like, how you can do that sometimes. And yeah, you look at certain websites, but I think, websites are getting smarter. They're just simple now. Like, there was a time, especially when we were designing sites, where it was supposed to be overtly visual. I mean, everything was, in the advent of CS, content management systems, and like, there's a simplicity to websites and actions to websites that I think are much better than they have been in the past. Yeah, when I go into websites, there's things that I do think about. Yeah, definitely, that I try to connect to print, and it's usually about the senses. Like, my mind just kind of goes conceptually. Like, I think about tactility all the time with a website. I mean, the study of haptics, which is a study of touch, right? Like with electronic stuff. I think that's always kind of always interesting. I more think about that stuff than, like, I guess, websites and things. Yeah. I don't know if that made any sense, or I just talked myself into a loop with that. So. I'm thirsty. I'm very thirsty. Anyway, any other questions? That's it. Oh. Yeah. Oh,
I've got the mic. I go
It was
first.
really weird. You had the mic, but you weren't talking, but there was like,
She's got, respect.
yeah.
I just want to ask, because I work for the European Central Bank. We have central bank people here and the Fed system. I mean, do you have institutional clients like that? And I was, when someone mentioned the colors, the marble, the pillars, this kind of shade of grey, blue. I mean, ours is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have institutional clients? Are they receptive?
I mean, we mostly have, we have educational clients. I used to work for a bank locally called Glenmead, where it was just green and this foiling and things. I've gone through that. I've worked within those constraints. I mean, presently we don't have, I think we don't attract those kind of clients, but I honestly don't think I would turn those down, because I don't have to think as much for those things in some ways, right? I mean, the strategy is, and the visuals are there for you, and you just play within this foreground. There's a beauty to kind of, I think, projects like that. I think you have to find the balance between those kinds of projects, but trying to embed like something of your own even in those little projects. We were working for, I mean, again, it's an educational institution, but Wharton was very much standardized, and they had a way of making work. I can't always apply that thinking that I apply to the pieces that I've highlighted here, but there's always little things. I always think about scale. I always think about the relationship of postcards to each other sometimes. Like, I think about the idea of, even if it's like a throwaway piece, can there be a way that like it's still collected, that when someone does keep them together, that there's something that is kind of nice that reveals itself or whatever? And again, like I'm a little bit out of practice with institutional in that way, very, very rudiment. Here's what you have. But I've done them. We just don't have a lot of those clients right now. And I think it's because I own my own studio. It's a choice. And I wouldn't mind one, though, actually. I think they probably would pay a lot, so yeah, I would. Maybe not. Oh, okay, maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, so I know, and I think that's where it's really, this is where I thought it was really scary to go, this is what I'm showing, and this is what we do. Everyone else, like, you don't always have this kind of client. You don't have this kind of work all the time. I guess I was just hoping that I could just show you just something different that might inspire a different way of thinking about the everyday stuff that you see. Maybe it'll change just the way that you look at the size of the page. Maybe you'll think about like, oh, how does this interact now with that person that, I don't know, like a project, whoever is the audience, how will this interact? Maybe it's about just changing the size of a brochure. I mean, there's many cases where our designs aren't great, but we make that one change, like just the size, and the clients are like, that is never thought about, like how someone will carry that. I mean, I think about those things. How will they carry it? Will they put it in their back pocket? Will it go here? And if it gets mailed, it sounds a little crazy. I think about like, how will it go in that mailbox? It sounds stupid. It sounds crazy, but sometimes I think about those things. But those things aren't always visual. It's more of the things that are going on outside that I think that's design. It's almost more important than what the thing looks like. Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. This is picking up on the limited palette theme. That,
Oh, the limited palette, yeah.
Have you ever had a chance to think about how academic journals are presented? You know, you have font, color, and white space to play with, and not much else.
Yeah. I mean, I think academic journals are kind of, you have to think of their purpose. I think sometimes some people might think it's, are you saying that it might be under-designed, or there's a possibility to even be better than what it is?
If you had thought about other possibilities, I mean, it is a classic form, and maybe that's okay.
I think it's so, I would, if I had to do a journal, I probably would follow what is the standard format. I think it's because, in terms of a grid, I would. I think because it works. It's not supposed, like, it's not supposed to be entertaining in the same way that, like, a pure brochure is supposed to be. It's a way to absorb things. What I would think about in cases like that is type size. I would think about, again, the size of the publication could be something that could be thought about. But in terms of its the visual articulation of things, especially for a journal, I don't think, why change that? I think people are processing the information in some ways. And the other way to kind of design, I would, maybe there is, you could interview the users and see what they would say actually needs changing. But for me, as, I read academic journals, but I love the plainness of them. As much as I'm if you can tell, I'm not a visual designer. I have a very limited palette because I hate picking color. That's one of the reasons I don't like to pick color. I have a palette that almost like works, and everything that I make is not, I wouldn't say is visual, I think it's more, for me, the design is behind that. That's where it allows me to talk about it, that allows me to kind of separate myself from other designers, but it's also a way for me to articulate why you're paying me, because I'm thinking about the things that you're really not, you're not thinking about, But in terms of visuals, I think in terms of the journal, I think it's okay. There's other things that I think could be thought about, though, like scale and how people carry that journal. Sometimes they're too big, they're but I don't know. I would think about where people read that. Do they read it on the train? Do they read it? And then, so then it should be smaller, so. Is that it? Yes? No more? Yay. Thank you.